Hi, welcome to the explanation portion for the hanging knots routine. To perform this routine, all you need to do to get yourself is a length of rope. I prefer to use a rope that's more soft and more subtle, and you need about 6 feet in length. Okay? Now, it's basically a series of knot vanishes and it climaxes with a knot appearance. Alright, so you can actually use your favorite false knots, slip knots to perform this routine. This routine is actually inspired to me by a routine from David Roth. It's called hanging coins, okay, whereby the coins would one by one turn invisible and hang onto the air, then he would catch them all back again. But I'm doing here with a rope and making knots invisible. Okay, I'm going to run you through the entire routine with the knots that I use in this routine. Starting with the first one, it's called the hunter's bow knot. Starting with the rope draped over my left hand, my right hand is going to come inside, picking up the rope, forming an M. The first and second finger is going to come into play right now. The right hand first and second finger is going to clip the hanging end on the front. The left hand first and second finger is going to come over here and clip this end from inside. I'm going to separate my hand, forming the bow. This is the first part. The next thing we're going to do from the back, the end is going to come right through the right loop to the front. My left hand is going to turn palm outwards, starting from palm facing myself, 180 degrees to palm outwards, picking the ends from the outside and pulling it in. And now by separating your hands apart, that will cause the knot to slowly diminish, forming the hunter's bow knot. Okay, and now after you have completed the hunter's bow knot, you're going to do the illusion whereby you cause it to turn invisible. And it looks something like this. I'm going to give you a view, pretending that the audience are over here, so you're seeing it from a side view. Okay, so in performance mode, this will be the view that the audience will be seeing. Let's pretend that the audience is over here. My thumb is going to come to above the knot over here and apply some pressure. The next thing I'm going to do, my finger is going to come over here and wrap around the knot, and the left hand is going to pull slightly upwards, and the moment you pull, it's going to release the knot just like this. But my right hand is still holding a loop of rope. This is still held inside my hand. And right now, simply by releasing pressure on the right hand, that will cause the rope to drop down, and it looks like the knot is being removed into the right hand. But in fact, there's nothing over here. And right now, people think that you're holding on to the knot inside. You're going to look at it and slowly cause it to turn invisible. It's very important at this point to not clench your hand into a tight fist, because if you were to have a knot inside your hand, it should show some volume. Okay, it shouldn't be a tight fist. So you have a knot in your hand. Okay, pantomime that you have a knot over here, look at it and slowly cause it to turn invisible. And when it's invisible, you have to place it somewhere. You look right at the spot on the air and hang it over there. That would be your first knot. And throughout the routine, you can keep on reminding the audience that you have knots hanging onto the air. After you've completed the first knot, which is the hunter's bow knot, we're going to move on to the second knot, which I use in my routine. I call this the lasso knot. The lasso knot was inspired by Tabari. Basically, he used this in his routine simply to tie a knot. But for me, I actually converted it into a slip knot. The knot looks like this. It's a very, very beautiful and graceful way to tie a knot. How do we do it? Very simple. You start off by practicing swinging your rope and forming a loop, sort of like a lasso. I swing it towards the front and pull up. That will cause the loop to form. The left hand will have about a feet of rope hanging down over here. So as I form the loop, my left hand is going to dip down and catch the loop with this end. I'll try to do this in slow motion. Like this. Okay, one more time. There we go. This is a ordinary knot. So how can we convert this into a slip knot? Basically, the way I do it, I'm just doing it in reverse, tying the knot by untying the knot, but in a rather interesting way. I put my 4 fingers into the knot this way. The next thing I'm going to do is to transfer this end of the rope to my first and second finger of my left hand. And all you have to do right now to convert this into a slip knot is to let all the rope fall right through this end over here. Okay? And right now the knot has vanished. But remember, you're supposed to turn this knot invisible. So how can we catch the knot again and cause it to turn invisible? That's when your right hand needs to come into play. We're going to repeat this knot again. Doing the lasso, creating the knot, putting the 4 fingers through. The way I do it, I don't just put the ends over there. What I do is I tend to just throw it and catch it with my first and second finger. I drop the loop through my 4 fingers at the same time when I toss the end over. And that will cause the knot to vanish. And my right hand this time, okay, is going to catch that knot which is falling. It looks like this. Toss over here, come down, and catch it. Through practice, you'll be able to notice that the knot will always end up at a certain position. So that's where your hand's going to come and catch. Still maintaining the volume in your hand, although there's nothing inside. Look at it, cause it to slowly turn invisible, and hang the knot in the air. So right now we have 2 knots hanging onto the air. To perform the last and final knot, okay, this is a double knot. It's a very, very complicated knot. What you have to do is hold both ends of the rope in your left hand, my thumb and first finger. I'm going to hold a loop over here with my thumb and first finger of the right hand. I'm going to form this image with the rope. Coming together, I'm going to pick up this end and bring the rope up, forming a big loop. Okay, that's a sliding loop. The next thing you have to do is to turn both ends and the loop towards yourself, sort of like closing a book. And you're going to switch the ends through the loop to the right hand and passing these loop over to the left hand, like this. And next thing I do is this, I take the ends and I go one more round towards the front, through the loop, and back again. You can actually do this again and again, but for me, I usually just do it once. This will create this look. It's a rather complicated knot, but in fact, once you pull, it would turn invisible. It would vanish. And this is simply the knot which I use for the third knot in this routine, and it will just hang right in the middle. And right now we're going to show you one more time a close-up view from the back. Holding the 2 ends in my left hand and the center on my right hand, we're going to form a loop that looks like this. We're going to switch the ends to the right hand and the loop to the left hand by closing a book towards myself, switching it like this. The 2 ends then make one more turn towards the front, through the loop to the back. And you've completed your double knot. And now that you have tied your double knot, you point into the air, finding a spot. You separate your hand and cause that knot to turn invisible and hang over to there. There's actually another knot which I didn't use during the performance of this routine. I use it sometimes during my performance of the hanging knots in my professional shows. It's actually a knot by a Japanese magician by the name of Futagawa. I learned it many years ago during one of his lectures. In performance, it looks something like this. It's a slip knot. I find a spot in the air and cause it to hang in the air. This knot is not as easy to learn as all the knots which I taught previously. It's a little bit more technically challenging. There are 2 actions that you have to do at the same time. Creating the loop and tossing a loop of rope through that loop at the same time. it needs a little bit of practice. Like this, and form through it, toss a loop right through, and then the left hand is going to shake to cause that knot to become tighter, and the right hand will have to pull up the rope to cause that loop below to become smaller. This should be the best knot. And then of course you find the space in the air and flick and cause the knot to hang over there. Credits to Mr. Futagawa from Japan, and if you like this knot, do practice it, and you're definitely going to have lots of fun doing it. Now that you have all 3 knots hung in the air, the next thing you're going to do is to catch them back onto this piece of rope. The next thing we're going to do is a classic multiple knots appearance on the rope. Using the same method, you can produce as many knots as you like. It's depending on the length of your rope and the way you do it. How do we do it? Very simple. You have to create loops onto the rope. Starting this way. My hand's going to scoop up. My right hand scoop right over here. Twisting it towards myself and put it on my left hand. I'm going to repeat this, forming the second loop and the third loop. It would be ideal if all 3 loops are exactly the same size. If they are not the same size, the first loop would have to be slightly bigger than the second loop, and the second loop would have to be slightly bigger than the third loop. This would facilitate forming nicer knots on the ropes. The last end is going to bring it up and place it in between your first and second finger of your left hand. To form all your knots, all you have to do is to simply apply the pressure in between the first and second finger of your left hand and let all the ropes fall right through your hand like this. And that will cause 3 knots to reappear back onto the rope. Let me give you a backstage view of this trick. To start forming the loops for your knots appearance, my right hand is going to scoop up, turn it towards myself and place it on my left hand. You do it again for the second knot, forming the loop up just like this, and the third loop just like that. The last end that's hanging over here, I'm going to pull it up and clip it in between the first and second finger of my left hand. And right now, to create the knots, all you have to do is to simply release all the loops and ropes that are draped on your left hand, and that will cause 3 knots to appear instantly back onto the rope. This is basically the method to tie and to appear the 3 knots at the same time. As for presentation, the 3 knots are hung onto the air as per all the vanishing knots. So you're going to prepare for the loops while not focusing attention onto your left hand. At this time, I usually focus the attention on the knots hanging or onto the audience. Maintain eye contact. And while it's prepared already, the next thing you're going to do is this: you're going to catch the knots back inside your right hand. For me, I do it all at one go. You can catch them one at a time. So once you catch them, I turn to the side and do sort of like a downwards motion with my right hand, at the same time releasing all these loops to cause the knots to form. I'm going to demonstrate to you. Let's pretend the audiences are on my right side. You're on my left. So we're going to catch all the knots, turn to the side, do a downwards motion, and cause all the knots to appear at the same time. It helps to hide the illusion of the knots forming in your left hand. At the same time, it appears as to all 3 knots are placed back onto the rope. It's a very nice finale for this routine. Usually, I toss this rope out into the audience. It can be examined, and they can untie the knots themselves, proving that these knots are indeed legitimate and real, and you have completed your hanging knots routine. I will see you at the next explanation.